Job chapter 17. And Lord willing, we'll finish up the chapter tonight if we can. We left off in verse 8, and this is just Job's lamenting and kind of going on about his situation, and every now and then he takes a swipe at his three friends. But a lot of this is going to be prophetical, and we can see that not only is it prophetical of a tribulation Jew, which is what Job's he's going to picture the remnant, but it's also in many ways pictures Jesus Christ. Some of the verses, and this is verse 8 is where we left off, and it's going to be no different. In fact, there are two statements in verse 8, or two parts of the sentence there, and both of them are going to apply to Jesus Christ. He says, upright men shall be astonied at this, and the innocent shall stir up himself against the hypocrite. So both of them can apply. Now the word astonied is like a stone. We get the word astonished. A lot of times the best thing to do is when you're looking at a word is kind of break it down, look at it, see what it has to say. You know, it's like the word Catholic. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I mean, if you break down the word like it looks, you got cat, yeah, and holic. Well, you know what an alcoholic is. Someone wholly given to alcohol. A cat-holic is somebody wholly given to a cat. And the Antichrist is a leopard. And he has a church. And he has preachers and ministers. Anyway. Study words. Look at words. And I'm not trying to do word studies. I'm just saying if you kind of look and break them down. Astonied, the word stone's right in there. And it's to be like a rock, astonished, petrified. And it says, upright men shall be astonied at this. Upright men that fear God are petrified by what happened to Job. I know after the first time I read it, I was kind of petrified, kind of taken back. I mean, you just can't imagine that kind of destruction, that kind of distress, that kind of discouragement, that kind of sorrow that he was going through. We can't even process that. And all we're saying is, oh God, thank you for not doing it to me. You know, you're just glad it didn't happen to you. So upright men that fear God, they're astonished by what happened to Job. Isaiah 52:14, here's the application to Jesus Christ. It says, as many were astonied at thee, his visage was so marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. Now, that's a reference over there in Isaiah about the crucifixion and how bad he was beaten and everything, but I think it goes beyond the physical, okay? To say that he was marred physically more than any man, well, I don't know. Men have been put through a chipper shredder. I don't think it matches that. You know, I mean, that's what Saddam Hussein's sons, they bought a chipper shredder, and boy, if they didn't like you, they'd just shove you head first down in that thing. And I mean, you know, but spiritually speaking, he was marred more than any man. You know what he says over in Psalms 22? He says, I am a worm and no man. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. He that knew no sin became sin, that he might... I've always copied that wrong, or said that wrong. Yeah, he became sin and knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. I don't know if that was exactly correct either, but close. A transformation took place on that cross. And he became sin. You say, what is that? Well, the devil is the incarnation of sin. The Bible says he's a serpent. So, somehow Jesus Christ, whether they could see it or not, maybe there's reason for it getting dark over the cross. But there was a transformation on a spiritual level. That's not to say it turned, you know, I'm just saying that whatever it was, he became sin incarnate for I don't know how long. He was able to get rid of it. He was beaten badly. You know, he looked a sight. with a crown of thorns jammed down on his head and blood all over him and spit all over him, pulled out his beard. He was definitely a sight. He didn't look like a man when they got done with him. When he says there, the innocent shall stir up himself against the hypocrite, well, Jesus Christ is the innocent. He's the one tempted in all points and yet without sin. And he suffered without cause at the hands of the Jews and the Romans. The Romans did crucify him, but it's the Jews that sold him out. And it's the Jews that kept demanding that he be crucified. Turn to Psalm chapter 69. We've been to this psalm more than a few times, and the whole thing has to deal with Christ and his ministry and the things that were going on there. In Psalm 69, we'll start at verse 20 and read a few verses. It says, "Reproach hath broken my heart, and I am full of heaviness. And I looked for some to take pity," like his three friends, "but there was none. And for comforters," like his three friends, "but I found none." Well, there wasn't too many that took pity or were comforters when Jesus Christ was being crucified. It says, "They gave me also gall for my meat." Remember, what they gave him to drink was supposed to mingle with gall. It was like a pain reliever. It was given to those that were about to perish, but he wouldn't receive it. And it says, "They gave me also gall for my meat, and in my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink." It says, and this is where he says, "The innocent shall stir up himself against the hypocrite. Let their table become a snare before them, and that which should have been for their welfare, let it become a trap." Man, everything about that Jew became a trap to him. His very religion became a trap. His wanting to preserve his lineage became a trap. "Let their eyes be darkened that they see not," and that Jew can't see anything about Jesus Christ in the Scriptures, "and make their loins continually to shake." They live in fear. "Pour out thy indignation upon them, and let thy wrathful anger take hold of them. Let their habitation be desolate. Let none dwell in their tents." And for the longest time, was exactly the case. "For they," and this could be the Romans too, "for they persecute him whom thou hast smitten." Well, the one that's been smitten was Jesus Christ. "And they talk to the grief of those whom thou hast wounded." So, "Upright men shall be astonished at this, and the innocent shall stir up himself against the hypocrite." Well, the hypocrite thinks that because he's not suffering and he is prospering, he is godly. The three men that are there that are accusing Job of some type of wickedness, they think that they must be better than him. Because look at us. We're well. We're healthy. We have wealth. We're blessed of God. Well, I'm not saying that makes you ungodly, but sometimes God puts Christians and he puts believers in a position where they're suffering greatly and they're not doing anything. They haven't done anything wrong. They might be doing everything right. And the problem here is, look at 1 Timothy 6:5. 1 Timothy 6:5. It says, "Perverse disputings of men of corrupt minds and destitute of the truth." And here's what they suppose. "Supposing that gain is godliness, from such withdraw thyself." Do you realize that's Laodicea? That's the way Laodicea thinks. I mean, here we got this big cathedral church. I mean, we got 50 acres out back. We got 10,000 people showing up for the service. We must be godly. I don't think I would suppose that. Just because you have gained things doesn't mean you're godly. And the Bible says you withdraw yourself from somebody that thinks that way. Verse 9, "The righteous also shall hold on his way, and he that hath clean hands shall be stronger and stronger." You know what encourages believers? What encourages or strengthens and emboldens other believers is the suffering of other saints. They watch it, they witness it, or they've read about it, and it emboldens them to be a witness for Jesus Christ. It emboldens them to stand. Bible says, having done all to stand. You know, you read something, or there's all kinds of biographies, autobiographies, but there's all kinds of biographies out there about different missionaries or preachers or translators, all kinds of people that you can read about. And when you read about what they went through, man, you realize you've had it made, and that you really can't complain. You've really been protected with a hedge about you. But then you think about, well, what if that hedge is ever taken away? How would I handle this? Everybody has that question on their mind. How would I react to it? Well, you hope that, you know, you're in good relationship with God, and that the Spirit of God is directing you in everything that you do, and including how you think about it. I mean, that's what I want. I don't want to be left to Mike Thomas handling it. God forbid. I want the Lord to handle it. I want the Lord to put it in my mind and tell me, okay, this is the situation, and this is how you're to behave in this situation. Don't leave me to it. I don't know what I'll do. I might fall to pieces, fall to the ground crying like a baby, or I might lock and load. I don't know what I'll do till the day comes. But I know I want to do what the Lord wants me to do. Philippians 1, verse 14. Philippians 1:14. Turn there and we'll also look at verse 28. Philippians 1:14, and many of the brethren in the Lord, waxing confident by my bonds, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. I mean, when you see somebody else going through it, and Paul's, you know, he's enduring it, he's weathering it, he's handling it. I mean, he's got the strength of God. You think, well, you know, I got the same God he's got. I got the same Holy Spirit he's got. You know, you say, you know, it's not about your courage. It's really about the Lord's courage. And he says, verse 28, and in nothing terrified by your adversaries, which to them is an evident token of perdition, but to you of salvation, and that of God. Not to be afraid of what they can do, okay? Here's what I know, okay? Here's what I know from this book, which is full of absolutes. What I know is they can't do anything to me that God doesn't allow them, or God, unless God allows them to do it. So that right there kind of cuts the mustard. The one to fear is God. The one to realize is, okay, God's not going to let him do anything to me that he's not going to allow. And that kind of calms me a little. Okay? Nobody's going to just run. The devil can't just run away with you and do whatever he wants. Now, you can make it worse by bad decisions and foolish undertakings and doing something wrong. I'm not saying you can't increase your own suffering. You can. But if you're trusting the Lord, I mean, he'll get you through it. James 5:11, it says, behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. That's what I know. You say, well, if I were in Job's place, I wouldn't feel that way. Well, he didn't feel that way, can't you tell? But toward the end, he does realize. Think about the mercy of God. At the end, he gets everything back doubled. He gets his children back. You know, the only thing he doesn't get back is his wife. It's all good, man. I mean, what I'm saying is that in that situation, it was all good. You know, his wife told him to curse God and die. So, the more the church was persecuted during the Dark Ages, the stronger it became. And you can see this, that even there's a book you can get called Fox's Book of Martyrs. And, you know, if you got a strong stomach, read it. It gets pretty in-depth. I mean, if it's edited by Forbush, it's kind of the older English, but you just cannot believe the stuff they came up with to torture Christians. But those martyrs that he takes you through the apostles all the way up to like the 15th century. So he's covering the Dark Ages, and there might be as many as 20 million that were persecuted and martyred. What you'll find in the one edited by Forbush is, if you don't get the one edited by Forbush, they take out the word Roman Catholic about 100 times, because they don't want you to know who did it. And it was the Catholic Church doing it to Christians, people that believed the book, and they were being persecuted, and they were considered heretics, and they were compelling them to recant of their beliefs. And they did everything. The Iron Maiden thing, and the stretching them, flaying them alive, dragging them, putting them in bags with rats, and then putting them in water till the rats climb their frame and eat them at the neck, and they just chew them up. But I can't even remember some of the stuff. Some of the stuff I'm like, who thinks up this weird wickedness, man? One of them was a material that they forced their mouth open, they got their head in a vice, and they're forcing this very scratchy, coarse material down their throat in a big line, just kept feeding it in, and they rip it out and lacerate all the way up the esophagus. And who thinks of that stuff? But anyway, when these things happen, they bayoneted babies, they threw them off cliffs. You think the Muslims are bad. You always keep your eye on the Roman Catholic Church. Then Muslims are one thing, that Roman Catholic. There's more about that whore in this book than there ever is about a Muslim. So keep your eye on the ball. We think first it was the communist, and we still got them around, but I'm not saying they're not a threat. And we got the Muslims, and we think that, and I don't care what they think, they are a threat. If you read their book, the Quran, you're the enemy. I don't know why we can't get that through our thick heads. But the Roman Catholic Church is one that's persecuted the church. Real church history is exactly that. It's studying the persecution of the Roman Catholic Church against Protestants or against believers. Now, what we call them, Waldensians, Albigensians, Paulicians, all the way down through church history, doesn't matter what we called them, it's what they believed. We could call ourselves anything, but what they would know about us is that we believe the book. Anyway. But the devil became wise to this spiritual phenomenon of the more he pushed and the more he persecuted, the more they became just alive, and the more people got saved. Didn't make any sense. Well, he got wise to it, and he decided if you couldn't beat them, no pun intended, pun intended, join them. So he joined us. He's been trying to join us ever since with the mother church, or the mother of harlots. You know what that's called? That's the doctrine of Balaam. In Revelation 2:14, but I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. Do you know what Balaam did? He told Balak, it's about Balaam, Balak, and Baal. Okay, you got to study that Trinity. Balaam is a false prophet, Balak is a false king, and Baal is a false god. And Balaam tells Balak, the false king, he says, he goes, I can't curse them, but I can show you how to get God to curse them. He said, how? Join them. Give your women to them, to their men. They will drag their idols in there, let them fornicate with them, and you will destroy them from within. That's exactly what they did. That's exactly what's happening here in America. We've been infiltrated from within. There's been many mighty mighty powers out there that couldn't overthrow America. But you know, the communists always said they'd overthrow it from within. They're doing a pretty good job. We're just about there. But you know the one thing they did? All they did is have to erode your morals. They've done that, man. I mean, we call evil good now. Erode your morals, break down the family. You break down the family, you don't have to break down anything else. Everything else breaks down. So that's exactly what they did and what they're doing. But he says the righteous shall hold on his way. Funny, it says his way. And he that hath clean hands shall be stronger and stronger. The more pressure they put on us, the more they threaten us, the stronger we will become. Now, I know you may not see that now, but you will. Verse 10 says, but as for you all, well, now he goes southern on them. But as for y'all, do you return and come now? For I cannot find one wise man among you. Now, I'm going to give you the best answer I have for that. It's kind of difficult for me to figure out what he means there. But it could be that he's telling them to take a hike and come back with some sense. He's telling them, return, then come now. Or, go out and come back in and prove to me that there's a wise man among you. Okay? Anybody got anything different? It's hard to read. I mean, it's just, that's like what he's telling them. He said there's not a wise man among them. There's that swipe right in the middle of him going through his lament. And then verse 11, he says, my days are past, my purposes are broken off, even the thoughts of my heart. Dr. Ruckman used this. He says, Job drops back into his soliloquy. Soliloquy. I knew I wouldn't get it right. And that's if you think of the word solitude or whatever, it's having a conversation with yourself. Okay? I call it a monologue, but one talking to himself. And what he's saying there, he says, my days are past, I'm done for. My purposes are broken off, I got no reason to live. And even the thoughts of my heart, I can only imagine the worst. And he's just talking to himself and said, I got nothing. I'm done for. You know that no Christian is ever in this position to think the worst? I mean, here Job, he really doesn't know whether he's going to heaven or hell. I mean, as far as he knows, he doesn't, it looks like he's damned. That's what he knows, or that's what he thinks. Because that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like to his three friends. And he knows there's something not right about it. But he can't put his finger on it. He can't seem to figure it out. That's never the case with you, ever. He said in Philippians 4:8, he says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. I know we're in the mud. I know we're in the thick of this thing, but it really is, we're in pretty good standing with God. And always keep that in mind. I mean, the very worst that could happen to you, is that you get to go home and be with the one you love. Man, on a lost person's best day, they're still going to hell. Now that's hard. That no matter what they do, unless they get saved, but no matter what they do, they're still headed for a place that's eternal, and there's fire and there's torment in that place. He says, verse 12, they change the night into day, the light is short because of the darkness. They are his thoughts. And the problem is his thoughts keep him awake, keep him wide awake with terror during the night. Insomnia is a funny thing, You can't sleep all night, you're wide awake, but then in the daytime, when you have to function and work and do things, then I mean, it's like you want to fall asleep standing up. Well, with what's going on with him, he's got night terrors. He's got he's got imaginations, and his thoughts are keeping him awake. And then during the day, the days are so short, it's like they're just it flips right into night again. There he's right back where he was before. It's a horrible cycle that he's in. He says the light is short because of darkness. Now, if we apply this to the tribulation, there's a couple things. One, God talks about shortening the days. Matthew 24:22, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. Some people think he actually shortens the day. I don't know about that. I think he's talking about the whole thing is shortened by a certain amount of days. Now that's what I think about it. There's some that would agree with me, and some that might not. But there's also talks about the sun and the moon being darkened. And because of whatever, remember when this, I can't think of where it's at, it's a Revelation, is it 9? When there's a pit that opens up, when the pit opens up, it says the smoke of a furnace comes rolling out of it. If you want to know what that smoke is, just watch some of those Jacques Cousteau to the bottom of the ocean, what do they call them? What do they call them there, Lydia? What are they called? Hydrothermal vents. I call them smokers. That's another name they gave them. And there's just this billowing black, full of sulfur smoke comes just piling out of there, and they're like vents in the core. Okay? Well, one of these days, there's going to be a real opening of that thing. And I guess the pollution and the smoke of that thing is going to darken daylight and sunlight and moonlight. So you may only have daylight as far as where you can see for only a couple hours during the day. That could be another application of it. See where I'm at here. Verse 13. He says, "If I wait, the grave is mine house. I have made my bed in the darkness." And I think this is Job's greatest fear right here. I think this is it. That he will not have resolved what has happened to him before he hits the dirt. That should be every sinner's greatest fear. That they haven't resolved what could happen to them before they hit the dirt. Job is frantic about finding out why God did this to him and where he stands with God. You want to know where you stand with the Almighty before you ever hit the dirt. It's interesting in Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7, this is in the tribulation, it is the last gospel preached. And it says, "I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel, to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God." That simple? Yeah, fear God. You'd be surprised how many people don't fear God. You'd be surprised how many Christians don't fear God. They fear everything else, though. They fear COVID. They fear the weather. They fear everything. Something going wrong. But they have no fear of God. You're better off to fear Him because everything else is under His control. So fear the one who can make things that can make things happen. Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come. And worship Him that made heaven and earth and sea and the fountains of waters. Well, when that judgment comes, let me tell you something, man, it is unbelievable. The second advent, I am actually starting to believe there's not going to be much of a population left. Less than 1 billion? It could be less than 100 million. And there are 7 or 8 billion people on this planet right now. You say, how many of them get raptured? Man, I'd hope at least 10% of them, wouldn't you? I'd hope. I don't know if that's true. But it's just going to be corpses everywhere at the second advent. And you better know where you're going. And if you're saved, you know. He says in verse 14, I have said to corruption, thou art my father, and to the worm, thou art my mother and my sister. What a family, man. Bunch of worms. He's obviously talking about the grave, you know. You get put to bed with a shovel, and eventually the worms get to eat you. But he's feeling especially close to these corruption in the worm. I mean, he just feels like death's right at his back door anyway. There's a similar verse, yet I don't believe it's talking about the grave. Look at Job 30, verse 29 and 30, since we're talking about who you're related to here. So he says, corruption is my father, and the worm is my mother and my sister. But he says in Job 30, verse 29 and 30, I am a brother to dragons and a companion to owls. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. I don't think he's talking about the grave there. So why does it talk about dragons and companions? Well, you know, dragons, as in devils, I mean, if we're going to apply this, and owl's an unclean bird. And the Bible talks about those unclean birds there, Revelation 18. Cage of every foul spirit. It has to do with evil spirits. And all these dragons and these unclean birds wind up in one place, and that's the lake of fire. And what Job is saying there is he feels like he's a brother to them, like I'm going to the same place they are. Look at Isaiah chapter 38. Now I'll read a few verses. Maybe I'll get to read a portion of it here. This is how Hezekiah summed it up. Now Hezekiah got sick, and the Lord said, you know, you're going to die. You know, get your house in order. Put your shoes away. I'm taking you. And Hezekiah just pleads with God. Yeah, please let me live. But you know, there's a bad side to this. I mean, it's a great thing that God gave him another 15 years, but man, in those 15 years, he messed up. I think I'd have quit while I was ahead. He says, the writing of Hezekiah, king of Judah, when he had been sick and was recovered of his sickness. Here's what he said. I said in the cutting off of my days, I shall go to the gates of the grave. I am deprived of the residue of my years. You know, he said, I want to live. I want to live out my life. I want to see my grandkids married, you know, and all this. I said, I shall not see the Lord, even the Lord, in the land of the living. I shall behold man no more with the inhabitants of the world. Mine age is departed and is removed from me as a shepherd's tent. I have cut off like a weaver my life. He shall cut me off with pining sickness. From day even to night wilt thou make an end of me. I reckon till morning that as a lion, so will he break all my bones. From day even to night wilt thou make an end of me. I mean, he's just talking about pining away with his sickness. Like a crane or a swallow, so did I chatter. He just turned to the wall crying, you know, please, God, please. Pleading with the Lord. I did mourn as a dove. Mine eyes fail with looking upward. O Lord, I am oppressed. Undertake for me. What shall I say? He hath both spoken unto me, and himself hath done it. I shall go softly all my years in the bitterness of my soul. O Lord, by these things men live, and all these things is the life of my spirit. So wilt thou recover me and make me to live. Behold, for peace I had great bitterness, but thou hast in love to my soul delivered it from the pit of corruption. There's death. For thou hast cast all my sins behind thy back. For the grave cannot praise thee. Death cannot celebrate thee. They that go down into the pit cannot hope for thy truth. The living, he shall praise thee, as I do this day. The Father to the children shall make known thy truth. The Lord was ready to save me. Therefore, we will sing my songs to the stringed instruments all the days of our life in the house of the Lord. It says, for Isaiah had said, let them take a lump of figs and lay it for a plaster upon the boil, and he shall recover. And so whatever he's ailing, some huge boil, you know, growing out of the side of him, the Lord told Isaiah how to fix it. I think When the Lord tells you it's time to go, think twice before you start crying and whining and beseeching God. You might just get your answered prayer, and you might be here, and you might be here to see something you wish to God you didn't get to see. I mean, by the time he got done, he sold out. He had let Nebuchadnezzar and his armies, or Nebuchadnezzar and his envoys, see everything that was in the house of the Lord. All the silver, all the gold, all the tapestry, all the things that they made for the temple, they got to see it all. You know what happens after his death, don't you? You know what he actually said? Hezekiah said, as long as things are good in my day. Man, that's selfish. As long as things are good in my day. They were killing those folks. I mean, thousands died. Okay. I got a note here. Let me see what that is. Yeah, in kind of the opposite application, where you're a brother to dragons and your father's a worm. Here's who Jesus Christ is close to. Matthew 12, verse 47 to 50. It says, then said one of them, behold, thy mother and thy brethren stand without, desiring to speak with thee. And he answered and said unto him that told him, who is my mother? And who are my brethren? To say that about Mary. Oh my. He didn't ever call her mother. He called her woman. Because he knew a bunch of crazy people were going to think she's the mother of God. She's not the mother of God. She's the mother of a body that God indwelled. And then people, Mary, mother of God, No. He says, who is my mother? I mean, here she's out wanting to talk with him. Because thy mother and thy brethren are out there, they want to speak with you. He says, who is my mother? And who is my brother? And he stretched forth his hand toward his disciples and said, behold, my mother and my brethren, for whosoever shall do the will of my Father which is in heaven, the same as my brother and sister and mother. Wow. Verse 15. And where is now my hope? As for my hope, who shall see it? Well, if you look at what the hope is throughout the Bible, and especially in the New Testament, the hope's the resurrection. And I guess he's saying, where's my hope now? And who shall see it? Well, they talked about being resurrected, obviously in the land of the living. He kind of wondered who's going to be there to see it. Are his kids going to be there? I mean, you got to remember, God did kill them too, right? I mean, and the accusations from these three friends is that your kids were doing something wrong too. It's a whole family thing, family sin. As far as the hope being the resurrection, Acts 24:15 says, and have hope toward God, which they themselves also allow, that there shall be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and the unjust. 1 Peter 1:3 says, blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which according to his abundant mercy hath begotten us again unto a lively hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Obviously, if he came up and you trust in him, you'll come up. And then Titus 2:13, looking for that blessed hope. And notice it says, and the glorious appearing of the great God and our Savior Jesus Christ. The blessed hope is the resurrection. And we look forward to that because we get our new bodies. We get to go to glory. And those that have already gone on come back and are reunited with their body. And they're given an immortal body. So it's a blessed hope. Job says, where is now my hope? And for my hope, who shall see it? Verse 16, they shall go down to the bars of the pit when our rest together is in the dust. The they here is most probably the corruption and worms of verse 14. Yet, he's talking about going just a little bit deeper than 6 feet. The verse deals with another place other than the grave, and that's hell. And he said, what are you talking about, the bars of the pit? Well, hell has gates, bars, and keys. Now, I know the first thing you think of, I can't even imagine that there are literal bars. Well, you don't know what kind of bars they are. You don't know what kind of gates they are. You don't know what kind of keys they are. Okay? Matthew 16:18 says, "And I say unto thee, thou art Peter, upon this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Jonah 2:6 says, "I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever, yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption." He's talking about beyond the grave there. Corruption is death. He's talking about brought up my life from corruption. Revelation 1:18 says, "I am he that liveth and was dead. Behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And have the keys of hell and of death." I don't know what kind of keys, what they look like. Sometimes you have to use your imagination. Huh? Skeleton keys. Good one. I mean, the Bible talks about gates of pearl in the future. So you don't know what this gate is made of. You don't know what those bars are made of. I wouldn't surprise me, it wouldn't be iron bars, actually. 2 Peter 2:4, but just to give you that, since we don't know, it says, "For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment." I've told you a long time ago that darkness is a great chain. And if you don't believe me, we're going to send you on a trip. All you got to do is go down to the caves, Mammoth Caves, and take the 6-hour tour. And when you get to about the middle of it, the guy will say, "I'm going to turn out the lights." Everybody has flashlights. Says, "Turn off your flashlights. I'm going to show you what absence of light looks like." And he just flips off all the lights, and I mean, you are just paralyzed. You're paralyzed. You can't see. You can't. Nothing. Put your hand in front of you. It's just all black. And you know what you do? You stand still. You can't move. And especially if you've ever been in a cave, it's easy to just fall right over a rock and skewer yourself through one of those stalactites or whatever. So I'm just like, and I thought, okay, now maybe I can just move one step forward. I probably could do that because I had seen it. But if I couldn't see where I was at, couldn't move. Couldn't find my way, never find my way out. Not without light. So chains of darkness. Lord's got these folks in a pit. He talks about the bars of the pit. One of these days he opens that pit up and lets some things out. We won't get into that tonight. Okay. Is there any question about what we covered? We'll see what we get in chapter 18. All right. Anybody got a question or comment?